All right. So, what Keith and I are hoping to do here is share a little bit of information and background on where the library is situated right now. As Alex said, we have just under 6 years before the library's lease is up. If you aren't familiar, the library is renting the space over in Webster Plaza. And we wanted to give you some background information on that and then lay out very roughly a couple of options that we may have. And then in another future presentation, we'll come back with a more thorough analysis for that. But we really wanted to make sure that you all and the community got a chance to find, what basically the library board has been wrestling with for quite some time. So first of all, I just want to give a little bit of a timeline. So the lease was originally signed in 2001, back when the library actually was in this building here, and then moved over to Webster Plaza. Many of you probably remember the big grand entrance that was on the front side of the plaza, where all the other businesses were. There was a renewal signed in 2006. I put some other markers here just to kind of get your memory jogged. So we had the Great Recession in 2007. In 2016, the second renewal was signed, and that renewal is the one that we're currently on. So that goes until the end of March 2032. So if you're doing some quick math, that means the library will have been in its current location about 30 years. Or many of you probably are familiar with this time span in your mortgage for your house. So it'll be about a 30-year time span. And I'll come back to that because it's a really key component of what the library board and the library is working with right now. So we had the second renewal signed. COVID happened in 2020, obviously. My predecessor, Terry Bennett, retired in 2021. The board hired me in 2022. And then looking forward, our 100th birthday, or the 100th year after we were officially chartered with the state as a public library, is 2029, which is about 3 years before our lease ends. So I mentioned that timeline of 30 years. So the next slide I'm going to show you is essentially what you look at when you look at your amortization tables, when you're paying your mortgage, that kind of thing. So over the course of the 30 years, by the end of our lease, Webster will have spent just shy of $13 million on the rental that we currently have. That does not include any of the upgrades that we've had to do. That does not include the renovation that happened in 2016. This statistic is just the rent, the CAM, which is the common area maintenance, and the taxes we pay. And yes, even though we're a library, we pay taxes on our property because it's owned in a private plaza. Now, we're going to keep digging into this math, but I want you to remember that over 30 years, Webster will have spent $13 million on that building. We didn't include the maintenance and upgrades because we assumed that would have been like for like if we had built in 2001 as well. HVAC wears out, lights need to be replaced, etc. So I want to show you how the usage of the library has happened since 2021. The reason I'm doing that is 2020 was a singular year for everybody. And comparing to 2019 isn't particularly instructive, although I do it for myself to keep myself honest. But here's our circulation and door count. This is what I would call a critical statistic. Some people might call a KPI, a key performance indicator of how the library is being used by the community. So the orange bar you see is our door count. So everybody that comes through our front doors gets counted on the way in and on the way out. So in 2021, we had about 140,000 visits in that year. Last year, we broke 200,000 for the first time since COVID. We had a small dip this year, but relatively stable. But what you will see is our circulation. So circulation, if you're not familiar, is how we count the books and videos and et cetera that you all might check out. We call it circulation. We have all sorts of library lingo, gets confusing. But what you can see here is a trend going up. Nationally, libraries' circulation was going down prior to COVID. Now that we're past COVID, libraries are seeing on a national scale a rebound of that circulation. And actually, trends that are being forecast show that we will outpace 2019. So there may be a point in the future where I say, let's go back and look at that. But for now, we're on an upward trend for both of our main statistics of circulation and door count. Another key component, because one of the comments that I get the most and really brings me the most joy, is when people tell me how much they love our library. Now, I had very little to do with this library. We didn't pick the spot. I didn't choose all the staff. We have an amazing team that works over at the library that really makes the most of what we have. And to be fair, we do have a lot of space. We have 45,000 square feet, which is probably a little bigger than this community needs. But here's the thing. While we may be shrinking some collections, the usage of our spaces, as you can see here, is skyrocketing. So the blue bar is our community room. If you've ever come to a main event, a big event at the library, it's that room with the projector screen. There's a kitchen on the back. That room is in relatively high demand. It's both in use for library events as well as community organizations. So a good example is we had the Red Cross in there doing a blood drive today. Our events are also going up. So our staff are really working hard to bring events to you that might be interesting. So we've got a Ukrainian Easter celebration coming up this weekend, along with a Diverse Abilities Fair. We have a ton of programming, and it has gone from under 500, well, let's look at 2022. Say 700 for sake of argument. And then this past year, we broke 1,000. And so we're seeing really healthy events and really healthy event attendance, as well as frequent study room use. Some of you may have come and worked with us, worked from home, from the library. We have a lot of people that do that. We have a lot of teachers and tutors that use our space to help students. Those study rooms have gone, that's the green bar that you see, just exponentially. And we only have 3 of them. So that 3,000 or almost 3,000 last year means each room got used almost 1,000 times. The next slide, this is really something that goes a little under the radar, but I wanted to highlight just to show what a great job the library board and the library staff have been doing. So the orange bar is our population, about 45,000, okay? In 2021, Webster had 12,174 active borrowers. These are people that use their library card at least once in the past 364 days. Fast forward to 2025, we're almost at 16,000. That's a 30% increase in the number of active users. I could tell you how many people have cards, and that number continues to go up because eventually they're still in the system but not active. These are active users in our community. So about 1/3 of our community uses our library on a semi-regular basis. So now I want to get back to some of the ways that maybe we could be doing better, some of the ways that give me pause as a library administrator. And John, I'll apologize to you because you've probably seen this one before, but I think it's new for everybody else. So in 2022, the board asked me to do a similar presentation. And one of the areas where Webster really fell down was our collections expenditures. And when I say collections, I don't mean debt collections. I mean the stuff that we loan out, the books and stuff. So this is how much we spent in 2025. You can see here that we just broke 150,000, and that's with the support of the Webster Town Board. We were at 100,000 when I first started in 2022. We were about, and you can see here, we're still playing catch up with a lot of our peers. These are the other our other peer libraries. You can see we still have a lot of catch up to do. So we've been slowly and steadily increasing that budget until we get up to that average line. So about $200,000 of investment in our collections. The reason that's important is because for every book we can't afford to put on the shelves, we have to borrow on your behalf. And for any of you active library users, when a new hot release comes out, you know you're going to be on that hold list for a while. And the other reality is Webster, just like many of its peers, give our books to our residents first. So that means when I have to go out and ask another library for a book, Webster residents are still playing second string because we're asking another library to let us borrow that book. It makes perfect sense. They're responsible to their taxpayers, just as I'm responsible to you. But as a result, we see increased waiting times in comparison to our peers, which can drive people away. Now, this is another view of that first slide I showed you with the bar graph going to 13 million. These are the libraries in Monroe County that are most like us, what are considered large suburban libraries. What you'll see here is our buildings and maintenance expenditure. I have a little call out at the top of our blue bar, which tells you that this number is just the rent, the CAM, and the taxes. So when I sign that bill and our treasurer signs that bill every month, it's a $40,000 bill every month to keep that library open. Now, in comparison, we've got Greece, Fairport, Penfield, and Brighton. Now, three of those four libraries all own their building, or the town owns their building. So their maintenance and their building expenditure is relatively low. There's no bond on their current building, and they're paying just to maintain it. Fairport, on the other hand, also rents like we do. Fairport is one of the best funded suburban libraries in the county. And you may wonder why, if I'm comparing rent to rent, why they're so much lower. I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is this is today's reality. So we've got 6 years to really figure this out and what we want to do as a community about how do we solve this. There's always the option of renewing a lease, but I'd like to posit that a more fiscally responsible option might be to investigate alternatives. So I believe that's my last slide.
Sure.
And so I am going to introduce Keith Mortimer, our town engineer, who's been a great colleague and partner in this effort. Do you want to switch or do you want me to pass them?
All right. So for those of you who don't know me, Keith Mortimer, town engineer with the town of Webster. A lot of new faces out there in the audience, which is great to see. So we're going to talk about what's next, and what's next is sort of where the engineering kind of technical side might come into this. So we've got about three options. We could lease or rent. We could buy a existing structure and renovate, or we could build new. One of the things I'll talk about, or I want to just remind everyone about rent or leasing, is if we were to lease in place where we're at today, we are likely to need to renovate that space as well. So those dollar values that Adam just showed to you of that 12, 13 million, and let's just say that holds steady over the next 30 years, we can expect another dollar value on top of that. What it is, I couldn't tell you today, but it would add considerably to that. So let's talk about where we're kind of at today and where we think we might be headed here. So Adam and I have had off and on conversations throughout all of 2025. Casual conversations, hey, we know this is coming, know this is coming. And we made a commitment that we would start truly getting into the weeds on this shortly after the holiday season of 2026. Adam went away to Puerto Rico. I went away to Puerto Rico. We had to get through our vacations and whatnot and deal with our winter here first.
You couldn't do some work in Puerto Rico together?
No, well, we probably could have. We might. We could do that. We could do that. Yeah.
I'll be down for it.
Okay. Well, it's but that being said, when we got back, we got together and we'll say about the last week of February, we really had a hard conversation, and really that conversation was to figure out where we're going. We know March 31st of 2032, which Adam has drummed into my brain at this point. That is when our lease is up, right? So we're roughly 6 years away from that. And we want to get out ahead of this. So we want to get everyone acclimated to some thought processes. We don't want to get to, say, July of 2029 and say, oh, what are we going to do? 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 And try to rush it through. So we hope this gives us a lot of leeway to kind of really evaluate, think through this, and come up with the best option and the best approach for our town. At the end of the day, everything ends on March 31st, 2032. We either renew our lease and we stay where we're at and we think about what we'll do with the space as we have it today, or we think about building new or renovating an existing structure. Either one is very plausible at this point. Actually, all three are very plausible. It's just, we kind of talk about, when we're talking about building new or renovating an existing structure, we do have other things we have to consider at this point. So the first thing out of the starting gate is location. We need to figure out where we're going to go. And we've already started that process of evaluating various parcels throughout the town, and we're looking into that. We are thinking right now that we really need to have an understanding. If we're going to go this route, we're going to have that location identified by September of next year, 2027. Once we know where we're going, then we can begin the whole process of design. We can go out to the construction, go through all of that, and finally move into what might be a new space. Again, whether we do this or we stay where we're at today and just renew our lease, we all end on 2032. So just at this point, what I'll say is Adam and I now have homework to do. And Adam, and I will admit, a lot of this presentation was Adam. I mean, he carried the bulwark of it all. The next one will probably be a lot of me, and that's where we're going to go through those three options and sort of give everyone a flavor of cost, what we think each one of those options are going to cost, some pros and cons, and then certainly get input from the community, from the town board, because we really will need to understand here very shortly, hey, if we are going to proceed with build new or renovate an existing structure, we kind of need to know that in short order so that we can continue this process of looking for space, land to build on. We'll probably still continue that process, just running on a parallel path, but we do want to get out in front of everybody these three options and, like I said, what we think the costs are and what we think the pros and cons are for each one of them. And with that,